talk about enums, new in PHP 8.1. I just wanted to show a quick example how to practically use enums. They're great for storing static values in your application. A lot of times if you have a lot of checkboxes, select boxes, something with a lot of data to choose from, a lot of options, it's a great way to store them, and you can add some functionality in the enum file so it's not just a constant stored somewhere on your application. One of the ways you can store static values is in the database. This is good for things that change periodically, like prices, something that you can put in a control panel and someone can access and update when needed. But for statics that don't change at all or very rarely, what people have done in the past is store them in a constant. You can hide them in a method depending on your scope of where you need them. You can actually put them, the old way was to put them in a class or in an actual separate file using define. What we want to look at is enums. It's a new functionality in PHP 8.1, and I like to create a directory underneath the apps directory called enums. I know when you type in artisan make enum, it creates the enum file right underneath the app directory. I like to sub it out one just to keep everything organized. So created a core Laravel app. I'm using Livewire because I want it to be dynamically updated. It's using SQLite. And again, all this is on GitHub if you want to just download it and install it and play with it. All the source code is there. I did sub some of the HTML stuff out into components just so you can just focus on the enum functionality. But if you want to look at that in more detail or use it yourself or whatever, again, you can download it. So this is mostly just to focus on the enum functionality. So underneath the app directory, I created a directory called enums, and there we created a relationship enum. This is for like a dating application. So namespace app enums, name of it is relationship, and it's a string. You can do an integer or a string, you can't mix it, and you just define a number of cases. And I used for the values, I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did a number count, so you'll see later why I did that, because I needed to break my checkboxes into segments of 3. You can also create methods in here. So here's a label method, and I just do a string in place, stripping out the underscore. Just see where it says casual intimacy. It strips out that, puts it into common text without the underscore. And as you'll see later, I use database names that correspond to these enums, and so I created a method called getDBName, and I pass in the name, and it gives me the actual database name, because what the relational database likes to see for a name versus what we're using is a little bit different. So this is a good way to get the DB name. And then if you're creating a whole bunch of checkboxes or lists, you can call a group and define each one of your enums for a group. So this is a relationship group. So nice functionality you can add. Let's go look at the database first. I created a database table called preferences. So somebody is on one of these sites and they're interested in these particular ones. They want to checkbox these particular preferences. So I created a Boolean column for each one of these in the preferences table. They're set to nullable. On the Livewire component, I created the respective variable names, set them to false, initialize them to false. They're public, so they're accessible on the front end. And then on the mount, I pull in this. I'm just pulling in the first one because it's a demo, but as you'll see here, you would pass in the user ID do an auth and then get that user, whoever's logged in, that way pull in their preferences from the database. And that way I'm setting all the values to what their settings are in the database in the preferences table. On the front end, when you make changes, select or deselect, I do an update. So, and again, this would be in a normal app with user ID. You would pull their you would update their record, not just, it's a demo, so I'm just doing first or create. In real life, you would pull in the actual user ID and update their particular record. So basically updating their preferences table each time that they select or deselect. Let's go look at the front end. Oh, one of the things you have to do with Livewire, the latest version, is in the model. If you're using booleans, with a checkbox like this, you have to cast it in the model, so they won't work correctly. It's kind of one of those little gotchas you get to figure out. You just cast the booleans inside the model and it'll work fine. Then let's go look at the front end. Broke these out into components. Underneath components, I have preferences and I have select and select blade. So if you want to look at the details of the HTML, you can download this and look at it, but I want to stay focused on the Enum functionality. What this is really good for is populating list boxes, checkboxes, anything where you have a lot of static data that's never going to change. So this is what it looks like on the front end. Let's go see how it works. So again, these are components. I did a label, a select, and in the actual option. But here's the functionality we're concerned with, is the actual enums. So we're referencing the enums file, cases, and we're doing a for each as relate, and then we're doing relate, calling the method label, which strips out the underscores and passes that label to the select option. So what that happens there is you're getting these names in your select. So and now let's look at another example. So we want to retrieve values from the database and populate checkboxes. So someone has selected options and it's stored in the database, again tied to your user ID. What's happening here is, again, we have preference block, preference check block, and then the important part that we're interested in is this for each. What I'm doing is I'm looping through the relationships enum file, cases, as relate, and then passing to preferences, I'm passing the database name and the label. So again, this is where I'm stripping out the database name, because in the select you need the actual value that's going to go to the database. So that's why that's being used there. And this is the part where I use the value, a numeric value, as a string, but I'm doing a mod 3, and then I do I cast it to an int, so that on every third one I can break it and break up the checkboxes. It's not the best way, but for this example it works. So have a look. There we go. So here's all the enums. They're the same ones listed here, but they're in a checkbox form, and they correspond to the database. Here's the structure. It's just a bunch of Boolean values, somebody's preferences. They're all set to 0 right now. There's only one user, ID 1. If we go in here and we check, 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 and we go to the database, Everything's been updated. When you check or uncheck these checkboxes, it's Livewire, so it's wire modeled to the actual data field, and they're set to live. So it's a little network intensive, but this is a demo. You can put an update button and change that functionality if you like. Let's go look at this. Preferences, check item. There it is. So in here I've done the wire model live with the actual field name. So if you change this, you won't get that dynamic updating. And all this is their components. I'm passing the name and the title in from the front end there. So again, you can download all this, take a look at it if you like. Yeah, so that's Enums. There's a lot more you can do with it. You can do a lot of methods down here. There's all kinds of crazy things other people are doing with adding functionality. It tucks it away. Lightning fast, because you're not having the retrieval time to and from the database for accessing the data values. So really nice, and obviously a nice addition to Laravel. All right, I hope you enjoyed this, and again, sorry for the delay. Sorry for the synchronization of my voice. Just pretend you're watching an old kung fu movie. Have a good day. Take care.